Good morning from the Freedom of Information and Privacy Association. I'm Patrick Farnsworth, and this is your Access and Privacy Online News Summary for Saturday, August 1st. This week, Alberta's referendum costs and voter file concerns, access records exposing hidden delays and historic mistreatment, municipal AI safeguards, and internationally, the growing struggle over surveillance, public records, and platform control. Let's dive in. First, we go to Alberta, where access to information, petition verification, and voter privacy are converging. LJAV reporter Alexandra Node at the Lethbridge Herald reports that opposition leader Naheed Nenshi is demanding the full accounting of Alberta's fall referendum costs. Records obtained through access to information requests identified at least $2 million in additional spending, including promotional videos, a referendum website, and an economic analysis. Nenshi said this information only became available after journalists and the NDP forced them to disclose it through access to information requests. The Canadian Press separately reports at least $365,000 in fees for a televised address and social media videos. Elections Alberta says the final price will not be known until the fall, in part because things such as the cost for voting locations are unknown. To pull off the election, the agency said it needs 60,000 workers, more than 4 times the roughly 13,000 needed to administer the 2023 general election. That province-wide vote cost taxpayers $37 million. The access to information takeaway is that much of the available accounting became public through access requests rather than proactive disclosure. LJ reporter Samia Loya at Shooting the Breeze reports that a particular citizen petition seeking a referendum on Alberta independence has cleared its signature threshold, but remains tied up in court. Elections Alberta estimated 222,597 valid signatures, passing the required 177,732. Elections Alberta said it was aware of a social media post alleging that an individual's signature had been used fraudulently. The agency reviewed the claim against its verification script, process, and call records. It said the description in the post did not match its process, and records did not support the allegation. The agency also screened the petition for test names seeded into the compromised elector list after April's voter data breach, and says none appeared. Verification is complete, but the proposal cannot advance until the Court of Appeal resolves the challenge to the petition's approval from a previous ruling. Before verification could begin, the petition was challenged in court by a group of First Nations who argued the process was unconstitutional. A judge agreed to pause certification of the petition, ruling that First Nations had not been properly consulted. Because the underlying legal question is unresolved, Friday's announcement does not guarantee a referendum will take place. Elections Alberta said next steps will depend on the Court of Appeal's ruling and any further direction from the courts. Staying with Shooting the Breeze, LJI reporter Samia Loya reports that the Water Not Coal campaign is gathering accounts from people contacted during verification of his petition. The campaign submitted more than 207,000 signatures, but the second stage estimate fell 5,644 short of the threshold. It is examining whether Elections Alberta caller identification appeared consistently, a concern made more sensitive by the exposure of information belonging to 2.9 million Albertans. Some people have told the campaign they did not see Elections Alberta identified on their caller display, but the campaign proponent, Corp Lund, acknowledged it was too early to determine whether that was isolated or widespread. Elections Alberta says its caller ID was active, testing confirmed it worked as intended, and that no signature failed simply because someone did not answer a call, email, or voicemail. However, the agency said some recipients may not have seen the identification because individual telephone companies may not include caller ID information in their registries or because of recipients' own spam or caller ID settings. All of this debate reinforces the findings of FIPA's Ipsos survey of 801 Alberta adults, conducted after the elector list breach. 84% agreed political actors should follow the same private sector privacy laws as other organizations, while only 4% preferred broad political access to voter information with fewer privacy rules. The full findings, including support for breach notification, penalties, and shared oversight by elections agencies and privacy commissioners, are available through FIPA's website. Turning to Canadian privacy stories, we start in Alberta with a municipal program that brings privacy, fairness, and accessibility into the same framework. LGI reporter Armand Khanna at the Lakeside Leader provides a report that shows how one local council is updating its bylaws to reflect new legislation. Slave Lake Council has modernized its Leisure Economic Assistance Program for residents facing financial hardship. The new bylaw adds privacy requirements under Alberta's Protection of Privacy Act, requires written reasons when an application is denied, and creates a formal appeal process. It also allows alternative verification from a school representative, social worker, or another reliable third party when standard financial records are unavailable because of homelessness, family violence, or recent arrival in Canada. Be sure to check out the show notes for the full details of that local program. Next, LGI reporter Teresa McManus at Freshet News reports that New Westminster has created an artificial intelligence working group after staff acknowledge some employees are already using generative AI tools, while the city lacks detailed usage reporting. Staff said it's become difficult to avoid interacting with certain AI prompts because many standard search platforms incorporate AI. New guidelines apply to staff, contractors, volunteers, students, and mayor and council. They prohibit entering personal, confidential, or closed meeting information into public AI systems. City officials confirmed that doing so would be a breach. One counselor said she has a disclaimer stating she doesn't use AI for emails and social media, written remarks in chambers, and more. She encouraged the other counselors to do the same. The working group will examine training, compliance, cybersecurity, bias, environmental costs, and tools that can provide stronger safeguards and better oversight. Turning to immigration-related access and privacy. LGI reporter Shilpashri Jagannathan at New Canadian Media reports that access to information records revealed a serious gap between what one citizenship applicant was told and what her file showed at Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. Razan Abu Ghosh has waited more than 2 years. She was repeatedly told a security assessment was causing the delay, yet her records show only an early RCMP clearance, a residency concern that was resolved in 2025, and a blank security field. To get information, Abu Ghosh had to file 2 access to information requests filed 10 months apart. Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada says it does not track whether explanations given to applicants match their files, or how many applications remain delayed beyond 2 years by reason. IRCC added that timing depends partly on, quote, how well and how quickly applicants respond, end quote, to requests, a line that shifts some responsibility back onto the applicant. In Abu Ghosh's case, the record shows she answered everything asked of her. Without access law, Abu Ghosh would not have known that these stated explanations did not align with the record. Testing that in court costs $3,000 to $7,000 in legal fees. On May 6th, she sent IRCC a formal demand for a decision within 30 days, warning she'd pursue legal action otherwise. IRCC never replied. The issues with IRCC's lack of transparency to applicants, creating delays, and forcing people into the ATIP system are well documented. Be sure to check out the show notes for FIPA resources on Canadian visa access rights and our 2024 report on Pathways to Precarity by Jerica Karuhara. And in a story where privacy requirements intersect humanitarian access, the Canadian Press reports that UNICEF's representative for the Palestinian territories says restrictions and damage to water systems are wasting Canadian-supported aid in Gaza. Jonathan Veitch says aid organizations have also faced demands for extensive, personal, and sensitive information about staff and contractors, with some groups barred when they did not comply. UNICEF focuses on providing education, healthcare, and nutrition services, but has had to take on water, sanitation, and hygiene services for all of Gaza because Israel has barred aid groups. Israel says its controls are intended to prevent weapons from being built and supplies from being diverted into the black market to finance Hamas's attacks. Israel cited similar reasons when asking about the personal and sensitive information of employees and contractors. UNICEF says the practical result is fewer organizations able to operate and more costly emergency water delivery instead of durable repairs. Now to broader Canadian access stories, beginning with records that helped restore an Indigenous veteran's history. LGI reporter Cherie Nareen at windspeaker.com reports that author Lynn Gull used family accounts on access to information requests to reconstruct the life of her great-grandfather, Joseph Gagnon, an Algonquin First World War veteran. The records documented his service, wartime injuries, and the benefits he did not receive under programs available to other veterans. Gull's book revealed that as a veteran, Gagnon was granted the ability to vote in Canadian elections. However, his membership in the Algonquins of Golden Lake would be terminated for the privilege. Gagnon was buried without a military marker in 1939. After Gell worked with Veterans Affairs and the Last Post Fund, which has been in place since 1909 and states no veteran is to be denied a, quote, dignified funeral and burial, as well as a military gravestone, due to insufficient funds at the time of death, end quote. A memorial marker was installed in 2024. The account shows how access to records often reveal and recover both personal history and evidence of systemic discrimination. LGI reporter Ghazal Azizi Kashi at the Investigative Journalism Foundation reports that Quebec's Bill 79 has helped some Indigenous families obtain medical records concerning children who disappeared or died after entering health facilities. One Cree family finally received records confirming the death of 7-month-old Hati Wapachi and identifying the cemetery where she was buried decades after her parents were given no body and no gravesite. The exact gravesite where Hati rests has yet to be identified, so Wapachi's case is ongoing. But the family has finally found some answers. As of February, 129 families had filed requests involving 221 children. 21 cases were concluded and 4 led to disinterment. Without Bill 79, the records for fewer than 12.7% of the children that the Family Support Directorate is currently searching for would have been accessible to families, per the latest report. Families and advocates nevertheless identify major gaps, including a 1992 cutoff, Quebec-only jurisdiction, uneven awareness, and the continued distrust of government-controlled processes. Awakak, an organization working with Indigenous communities to locate missing family members, said no reason was given for the 1992 cutoff. Thus far, 2 requests have been made for children whose birth occurred after 1992, and 5 requests have been made for deaths or disappearances after 1992. You can find the link to Bill 79 and its 2021 press release in our show notes. Next, LGI reporter Anushka Yadav at The Pointer reports that Caledon has awarded Argo Transit a pilot contract worth $4.61 million, while questions continue over Brampton's separate, nearly $11 million deal with the same company. Brampton approved its agreement without a public report and has withheld the final contract. A Freedom of Information response produced almost 1,500 pages, with 86% fully redacted and another 6% so heavily severed that they were effectively unreadable. The Municipal Freedom of Information and Privacy Act includes exemptions which allow a municipality to withhold certain information if it falls under one of 4 categories, including legal advice, personal information about identifiable individuals, labor negotiations, or certain third-party information that might negatively impact the partner. The City of Brampton has repeatedly stretched the use of these exemptions to keep information from the public. Officials withheld the final contract with Argo, claiming it was exempt from disclosure as, quote, It contains information relating to negotiations and financial, technical, and commercial information that was supplied to the city in confidence, end quote, citing Section 10 and 11 of the FIPA. The pointer has narrowed its request to the contract, and the dispute is now before an adjudicator at Ontario's Information and Privacy Commissioner, as Brampton prepares to cut several conventional transit routes. Staying with the pointer, LGI reporter Ed Smith reports that the owner of the deteriorating former General Motors property in St. Catharines has asked Ontario's Superior Court to overturn municipal cleanup orders or extend compliance until June 2027. The appeal follows years of resident complaints, enforcement disputes, and previous Freedom of Information reporting that exposed communications surrounding the site, as well as a close relationship between the site owner and the former mayor. The owners of the site argued they were given an unrealistic timeline to comply due to the complex environmental and structural issues. City staff say the current deadline is flexible, and staff would be looking for tangible progress, not completion by a fixed date. They also said they anticipate working collaboratively with the owners as remediation of the former industrial site moves forward. Residents argue the latest court action risks another delay at a property already associated with safety and contamination concerns. The appeal is scheduled to be heard on August 13th. Wrapping this segment, CBC Radio Canada will not disclose the expected cost of Canada's participation in the Eurovision Song Contest. A Canadian Heritage memo obtained through Access Law says another country's 2025 costs range from roughly $400,000 for Portugal to $1.5 million for Israel. The same memo notes that the Broadcasting Act protects CBC's independence, meaning Ottawa cannot order the public broadcaster to participate. CBC says the decision was its own, but the refusal leaves the Canadian price tag undisclosed for now. The 2025 federal budget said the government would work with CBC to explore participating in Eurovision, and Prime Minister Mark Carney announced earlier this month Canada will take part in the global cultural event next year. Now to international stories, where the struggle for information is increasingly a struggle over surveillance power. Writing in The Conversation, Canadian researchers describe how the U.S. immigration agency ICE has combined government information, commercial data brokers, and platforms such as Palantir to locate and investigate people at scale. The data brokers get information from internet browsers, libraries, cell phones, credit card purchases, financial institutions, police departments, and other government agencies. Current American law allows government agencies, including the police, to obtain personal information from commercial organizations without a warrant. On top of this, ICE is using facial recognition to identify protesters and undocumented immigrants. AI has made it easier to cross-reference multiple datasets, creating concern about an expanding data dragnet. The grassroots organization Mi Gente used interviews, public records, and Freedom of Information requests to map those relationships. A recent report found ICE's commitments to a core group of commercial data brokers rose from $4.9 million in 2018 to $14.5 million in 2025. This bottom-up scrutiny is sometimes called surveillance, using records and data to watch powerful institutions and make hidden systems visible. Next, the Associated Press reports that the U.S. Navy has reversed statements suggesting it would restrict public access to sailors' service histories. Captain Candice Tresh, a spokeswoman for the Chief of Naval Personnel, claimed that the service would, quote, no longer provide public on-demand access to sailor biographies unless the subject of the request is a public figure or extenuating circumstances exist, end quote. A naval official who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss a sensitive situation now says the announcement resulted from an internal misinterpretation. Last week, a policy message mandated leadership biographies are being removed from public-facing websites for security reasons, but ordinary service record requests remain subject to long-standing disclosure procedures. According to Tresh, the Navy's Personnel Office decided to expand the policy to deny access to any currently serving sailors' service information in the interest of equality. She said that while they would still confirm whether someone is or previously was a sailor, no other details would be offered until the undefined threat had passed. The clarification came after the Navy denied an Associated Press request for a specific sailor's biography. The episode arrives as the Pentagon seeks broader authority to withhold some unclassified records, a proposal transparency advocates say could expand an already inconsistently applied category of controlled information. And in New York State, the Associated Press reports that the Salamanca School District has paused plans to place a humanoid AI robot costing nearly $60,000 in a high school program. State education officials, teachers, and residents raised concerns about its role and the protection of student information, as well as the maker's ties to a company that produces hyper-realistic sex bots. The district says the robot would not record audio or video, would store information locally, and would keep student-linked data encrypted under district control. The robot also had been programmed to steer clear of inappropriate topics such as sex, violence, and gambling, and it won't be able to search the public internet or draw answers from unvetted generative AI services. For now, the pilot is on hold while the district develops stronger student data privacy agreements and continues community consultation. The school district stressed the pilot, which also includes a rollout of a virtual AI-powered teacher's assistant and an at-home tutoring program, is not about replacing staff. Beyond the United States, the Associated Press reports that the International Criminal Court's member states have removed Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan from office over findings of serious misconduct and breach of duty arising from sexual misconduct allegations emerging almost 2 years ago. Khan denies the allegations, and his lawyers say they will challenge the process. According to documents seen by the AP, Khan engaged in a sexual relationship with the woman and tried to prevent her from pursuing her allegations. The court must now elect a replacement while facing intense external pressure, including U.S. sanctions against 13 members of staff, including Khan. Existing arrest warrants from 2024 for Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for crimes against humanity are not immediately affected, but the decision places institutional accountability and workplace safeguards at the center of an already politically charged moment. And finally, the Associated Press reports that Russia has charged Telegram founder Pavel Durov with aiding terrorism, placing him on international wanted lists, and says he could face life imprisonment if convicted. The charges come as authorities have sought to restrict the use of Telegram as part of a widespread crackdown on online freedom that followed Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Russian authorities allege Telegram failed to remove channels and bots used for violent and criminal activity. Russia itself has faced accusations of using Telegram to coordinate and recruit people to carry out acts of arson and sabotage in Ukraine and across Europe. Durov says the case is a pretext to suppress privacy and free expression. He also remains under investigation in France over alleged criminal use of the platform. At the same time, Russia actively promotes what it calls a national messaging app known as Max, which critics say could be used for surveillance. The platform is touted as a one-stop shop for messaging, getting online government services, making payments, and other activities. It openly says it will share user data with authorities upon request, and experts also say it doesn't use end-to-end encryption. Together, the case captures a difficult and growing conflict: how to hold global platforms accountable for harmful activity without turning regulation into unchecked state control of private communication. That is our news summary for this week. Thank you for spending part of your day with us. And a big FIPA thank you to all the reporters, outlets, and contributors whose work makes this podcast possible. Please subscribe to Access and Privacy Online, follow FIPA's news monitoring, and consider supporting FIPA's public interest work with a donation. Our writer is Sean Fisk. Original music is by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. I'm Patrick Farnsworth, your host and producer. Thanks again for listening. Stay safe and stay informed.